Hello and welcome to DSW's Endpoint Assessment for the Level 4 Sales Executive Standard. My name's Isabel, I'm a Product Owner at DSW and I'll be talking you through this standard today. This recording is designed to give you an overview of what will happen during Endpoint Assessment, what to expect, when it will take place, but also how apprentices can prepare and what support is available. By the end of this, you should have a clear understanding of how the process will work, what the requirements are, and of course, if there are any questions or anything you need more information on, we'll show you where to go for additional support at the end of this recording. Today we'll be discussing what the endpoint assessment process looks like, how and when it will be delivered, what happens during the assessment itself, and we'll go into more detail about the Sales Executive Standard and how each assessment method works and how it will be graded. What is endpoint assessment? This is what we call the series of assessments an apprentice must take to prove they are able to do the job for which they have been training. These take place once the on-programme period is complete and the apprentice is deemed ready for endpoint assessment. Assessment design and delivery. DSW create assessment materials in line with robust design principles that are recognised by Ofqual. These principles are validity, reliability and comparability, manageability, and minimising bias. This means you can be assured that our assessments are appropriate for the standard, that everyone will get the same experience, that the assessments will be consistent and fair, and that everyone will have a chance to succeed. When does endpoint assessment happen? Endpoint assessment begins when the on-programme phase has been completed, the portfolio is ready to submit, required functional skills have been achieved, and the employer and apprenticeship training provider agree that the apprentice is competent. The next stage is called Gateway, and this is when the apprentice begins preparing for the endpoint assessment process. What happens during endpoint assessment? The apprentice completes the assessments detailed in the assessment plan. There is still an expectation that the apprenticeship training provider will support the apprentices throughout the endpoint assessment period. This is to ensure that they are familiar with what's to come, and so mock exams can be completed with them. In order to pass and be deemed competent, the apprentice must pass all of the assessments. This happens over a period of 16 weeks from the point they are approved for Gateway. Here we have an overview of the assessment methods used for the Sales Executive Standard. It's made up of 3 components. We have a work-based project which must be completed after Gateway, and the apprentice has 10 weeks to complete that. There's a 30-minute presentation and Q&A between the assessor and apprentice, and a professional discussion underpinned by a portfolio of evidence, with the portfolio being submitted at Gateway. We'll look at each method in a bit more detail now. Portfolio of evidence. The portfolio is built up throughout the on-programme period and needs to be submitted at Gateway. You can either upload it to EPA Pro as a zip folder, or you can provide us with a link to your ePortfolio platform. In the portfolio, we're looking for a blend of evidence, and although it's completely unassessed, it's really important that the apprentice puts in as much as they possibly can in terms of demonstrating their competence with their best pieces of evidence. This will allow us to explore that further and relate to specific pieces of evidence to discuss in the professional discussion. In their portfolio, they will need to demonstrate how they have applied the skills and behaviours of the standard and should contain real work tasks that they have completed. We provide a referencing table in the toolkit so the apprentice can map the evidence in their portfolio to the relevant pass and distinction descriptors. Case studies. Case studies are a great way for the apprentice to demonstrate what they've done in a specific situation, building a picture behind a situation, and from there they can pull on pieces of product and performance evidence which demonstrate exactly what they've done in relation to the case study. It's a great way for apprentices to bring all of their evidence together and give a more rounded picture of what they're capable of. They do need to make sure that they corroborate what they have said in their case study with evidence, as it is purely anecdotal. Evidence types. There is no minimum or maximum in terms of pieces of evidence permitted within the portfolio. One piece of evidence could span several past descriptors, so they could use one case study and additional pieces of evidence to cover multiple descriptors. A piece of evidence might be a single document, or it may be a folder containing a number of documents which link together. We're looking for quality rather than quantity. Have the apprentices think about examples of specific situations they've been involved in which would allow them to demonstrate multiple areas of the standard. They can cover several past descriptors within one piece of evidence, or they may need several pieces of evidence to cover one past descriptor. We'll go now on to different types of evidence. The best portfolios contain a blend of anecdotal, product and performance evidence. As you can see, there is a wide range of evidence types, and this list is not exhaustive. You may find that the evidence you choose to provide is quite different to what appears here, which is fine as long as it's demonstrating those pass and distinction descriptors. We do ask that video recordings are a maximum of 2 hours within the portfolio, and they will need to be time-stamped in the referencing table. Work-based project. The project will allow the apprentice to reflect on a real example of work done in their role. The project should contribute to the employer's business and showcase how the apprentice used the knowledge and skills of the standard to deliver the service required by their role. Once the apprentice has successfully passed through Gateway, the independent assessor will provide a selection of project titles. The apprentice and employer must choose one of these, and this will be the title of the project the apprentice completes for their endpoint assessment. The apprenticeship training provider must confirm the chosen project title and start date for the project within 2 weeks of receiving the list of titles from DSW. The project must be started and completed after Gateway. The start date will be agreed by the employer, apprentice and DSW, which will trigger the start of the 16 weeks endpoint assessment period. The project must be completed and submitted within 10 weeks of the start date, or it will be marked as a fail. The main output for the project is a project report, which must be between 5,000 and 5,500 words. The word count does not include headings used within the body of the text, appendices or references. Anything over this word count will not be assessed. The project report should be supplemented by product evidence, which authenticates the apprentice's account. This may include things such as emails, reports, minutes from meetings, or project documentation. Apprentices must comply with GDPR legislation, as well as redacting any commercially sensitive information where appropriate. The final project report should be completed using the project template available in the toolkit. The apprentice must also complete the referencing table from the toolkit, mapping their evidence to the pass and distinction criteria. Instructions on how to complete this are in the referencing table itself. Once the project report has been completed and submitted to DSW for assessment, it will be marked and graded within 5 working days of being submitted. Feedback will be given to the apprentice before the presentation is carried out. The apprentice must pass the work-based project in order to progress to the next assessment method. Presentation and Q&A. Once the apprentice has progressed through Gateway, the assessor will provide them with a brief which outlines what the presentation needs to cover. The presentation will be conducted via video conference technology, where the apprentice will need to share their screen and deliver their presentation to the endpoint assessor. The apprentice will need to map their presentation to the criteria aligned to this assessment method, which can be found in the presentation referencing table in the toolkit. A copy of the presentation, along with the presentation referencing table, must be provided to the endpoint assessor at least 2 weeks prior to the presentation date. The presentation will take the following format: a 10-minute sales pitch of the apprentice's organisation's products or services, demonstrating how they positively differentiate their products or services. All apprentices will be allowed to run over the allocated time by 1 minute in their presentation. The presentation will then be drawn to a close at 11 minutes. A 5-minute explanation of how they prepare for a sales pitch. A 15-minute question and answer session around specific points that the assessor wishes to explore with the apprentice in relation to their pitch and pitch explanation. All apprentices will be allowed up to 1 minute 30 seconds additional time to complete the answer to the question that has been asked. This time cannot be used to ask further questions. The Q&A will then be drawn to a close after 16 minutes and 30 seconds. Prior to the presentation and questioning, the independent assessor will have prepared 6 questions for the questioning element based on the subject matter. However, the questions may be modified to take account of the presentation evidence. The assessor may ask up to 2 follow-up questions for each of the core questions that clarify their understanding. Professional discussion. The professional discussion is a structured dialogue between the apprentice and independent assessor designed to establish the apprentice's understanding and application of the knowledge, skills and behaviours that link to the professional discussion. It will take place immediately following the presentation with a short break in between if required. The portfolio of evidence can be used by the apprentice and assessor to refer back to during the professional discussion. It should last for 50 minutes plus 10% at the discretion of the assessor. This is to allow the apprentice to finish answering a question or make their final point. It will be structured as follows. A 25-minute question and answer session that comprises 5 structured questions. The apprentice will not see the structured questions before the assessment. The assessor may also ask up to 2 follow-up questions per core question if required to clarify their understanding, but they will not lead the apprentice. The second part is a 25-minute discussion around specific points that the assessor wishes to explore with the apprentice. The discussion will focus on the knowledge, skills and behaviours for this assessment method, what they did, what they've learnt, results and what they would do differently. The discussion will be held in an environment free from distraction via online video conferencing such as WebEx or Zoom as advised by the assessor. You may ask to use an alternative platform if necessary. It's strongly recommended that this platform is tested prior to the date of assessment to avoid technical problems and ensure familiarity with the platform. Following the professional discussion, the assessor will finalise their assessment decision and will issue the final grade and feedback to the training provider. This will be done within 5 working days of the assessment date. Mock questions are available in the toolkit so apprentices can familiarise themselves with the type of thing they should expect. Grading. There are 3 graded assessment methods and each assessment method is graded either a distinction, pass or fail as follows. To pass the work-based project, the apprentice must meet all 33 pass criteria which are mapped to this assessment method at pass level. To achieve distinction in the work-based project, in addition to the pass criteria, the apprentice must meet 10 of the 13 distinction criteria. To pass the presentation and Q&A, the apprentice must meet all 12 pass criteria mapped to this assessment method at pass level. To achieve distinction in the presentation and Q&A, in addition to the pass criteria, the apprentice must meet 5 of the 6 distinction criteria mapped to this assessment method at distinction level. To pass the professional discussion, the apprentice must meet all 22 pass criteria which are mapped to this assessment method at pass level. To achieve distinction in the professional discussion, in addition to the pass criteria, the apprentice must meet 7 of the 9 distinction criteria which are mapped to this assessment method at distinction level. Apprentices must achieve a minimum of a pass in all 3 assessment methods to achieve an overall pass, and a distinction in all 3 assessment methods to achieve an overall distinction. Resits. Any apprentice who resits or retakes an assessment method will have the grade for that assessment capped at a pass grade unless there are exceptional circumstances accounting for the original fail. A resit should be discussed between the apprenticeship training provider, employer and apprentice, and DSW should be notified. If an apprentice fails the work-based project, a new project must be undertaken and submitted. In this instance, 10 weeks will be allowed to complete the assessment from the agreed start date of the new project. A resit of the assessment method must be completed within 6 months of the fail notification, otherwise the whole assessment must be resat. Thank you for watching. We hope this has been helpful. As always, we're happy to help if you have any questions or need any more information, so please do get in touch. You can email us at info@dswapprenticeships.co.uk or give us a call on 01302 760 008. Thank you.